Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this chilly morning. At least the sun is out. I am Nassau County Executive Laura Curran, and I'm very happy to be joined by my Deputy County Executive for Public Safety, Tatum Fox, Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder, Suffolk County Sheriff Eric Toulon, Nassau County Sheriff Vera Flood, James McDermott, who is President of the PBA, Brian Sullivan, President of the Nassau Correction Officers Benevolent Association. We have President of the SOA, Kevin Black, and Junior has joined him. We are also joined by, from the Detectives Union, the first Vice President, Jeff Gross, and I want to thank you all for being here. Our number one responsibility is public safety, and my number one concern as County Executive is to make sure that our communities are as safe as they possibly can be. No one is disputing that the system, the criminal justice system, should be reformed for instance, the poor teenager who's caught with a little bit of marijuana or caught perhaps stealing a backpack and can't make $5,000 or $500 for bail to get out of jail. But what we've seen is too much all at once. Shortly, you'll hear from members and representatives of law enforcement who will offer important perspectives that we need to take into account. These are the people who we entrust to protect public safety, and these are the people that I listen to in protecting our communities. I've been talking to our Albany legislators about making changes in the law since last year, and I've spoken with all of our Nassau County senators, again, in the past 24 hours. They are open-minded and agree that amendments should be made. So we're here today as a coalition, a common sense coalition, dedicated to letting our representatives in Albany know what we are seeing here on the ground and how we believe this can be improved. And I'm committed to delivering our list of recommendations to Albany as early as this week. This is not about politics. It's about public safety and making sure that we are advocating together on common sense changes to the law. For example, it's common sense that judges be given discretion in setting bail by making an appropriate risk assessment based on a defendant's prior convictions. And it should be common sense to reconsider the litany of crimes that one is eligible for being released, such as selling 5 kilograms of cocaine, or a DWI where a child is killed, or hate crimes. We are blessed to live in a county and on an island where we have historic crime lows. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our communities safe. I would now like to call up Sheriff from Suffolk County, Errol Toulon, to say a few words.
Thank you, County Executive Curran, for bringing us all here today. A few things that are most important when you think about the bail legislation is one, as County Executive Curran said, the judge's discretion to look at a criminal history to see, one, if that defendant should be returned back into the community, and more importantly, if they were arrested previously, have they met their court appearances? If they have not appeared in court, why would we release them? Second, the victims. Most importantly, the victims of these crimes. They're being re-victimized by this legislation because now the people that are alleged perpetrate a crime against them are now returning back to the community. And thirdly, when you think about individuals that commit burglary and robberies, that have a substance abuse issue, that can get the treatment while they're incarcerated, will not be able to not only get the treatment, they will return back to the community and possibly reoffend to fuel their addiction. We must do something. We must stand together, and we must amend this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ryder?
Good morning. As you just heard, there's a place for justice reform. There is. And if those innocent or those kids who are arrested with low-level marijuana crimes shouldn't be sitting in a local jail because they don't have the $500 bail. But they've gone way too far. The broad brush of Albany has painted it right across the board with all misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. So we've spent the last 2 years fighting the opiate epidemic here in Nassau County. We've had success in the last 2 years of reducing our overdoses, both fatal and non-fatal. We're getting the education out there. But the problem is now that buyer who gets arrested does not get in front of that diversion judge. That dealer who sells the drugs to our kids is going to be walking right out with an appearance ticket and not getting in front of that judge and not seeing his past history of the crimes he's committed. But there's another side to this. There's also discovery. And on the discovery side, we have 15 days to turn over everything to the defense counsel. That means our witness information, that means our victim's information, all goes to the defendant. And he has options within that 15 days to go back and view a crime scene. These things, they've gone way too far, and we're urging Albany to go back to the table and start to retract some of these laws that have gone forward. Make some common sense decisions, make the right decisions, because it's about the victims. And now the victims have turned out to be victimized twice, once by the bad guy and the second by the system. So we got to make sure that we change it, get back to the table, and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sheriff Vera Flood of Nassau.
So to reiterate what the county executive said, and Sheriff Toulon and Police Commissioner Ryder, bail reform has to be amended. The judges have to have more discretion on who goes to jail and who they set bail for. It's very important that we don't let the wrong person back on the street when they absolutely need to be in jail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As part of the coalition, we're going to be getting input from our union leaders who are hearing from their members. And for that perspective, first we're going to hear from Kevin Black, who is president of the Superior Officers Association. Oops, sorry, Kevin.
Good morning. I'm sure you all know what deja vu is. And we were here less than a year ago before this was passed, and we predicted disaster, and now you see the results. This is just a lack of common sense. We haven't even gotten, as Commissioner Ryder said, to discovery, where victims and witnesses' information must be turned over to the defendant and his counsel within 15 days. It was mentioned about coming back and seeing the crime scene. Picture your family or your family member who's had their home violated in a burglary or something worse, and now the defendant gets to come back to your house and examine the crime scene with his attorney. This goes well beyond taking care of a young person who gets caught with marijuana and spends way too much time in jail waiting for trial. This goes well beyond common sense. This is an agenda that's been set and has been followed, and here we are suffering the consequences. Hopefully we can come with some suggestions and they'll be listened to in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you very much. PBA President James McDermott.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a good day. This is something that had to happen. Like Kevin said, deja vu. We were here last year doing the same thing. I'm glad that everyone here is in agreement that it was too far to one direction. The aspect of it that concerns me probably the most is the discovery, the 15 days. Cases are going to be lost, and it doesn't give the DA's office and the police department enough time to get these things prosecuted correctly. So, like Kevin said, and like everyone else said, and I agree about, we hope that Albany's listening, and we're all here together trying to move forward to make changes. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I would now like to call up COBA President Brian Sullivan.
Thank you, County Executive. Just briefly, I'd like to touch on this. My organization has been very outspoken about what's going on here with this bail reform legislation. There's hopefully that we could clear up the false narrative that's been going on here since all of this was done in the budget last year. We were all in Albany speaking about this, telling our legislators that this is a bad idea, that the way this is going on, it can't go through the way it is, and we were assured that judicial discretion was going to stay a part of this. And we all know that once the budget was done, judicial discretion was specifically carved out of this. It's not a good day when legislatively you take away the powers of one of the branches of government, and that's pretty absurd, and that has to be fixed here. But the false narrative that needed to be fixed, and I think everybody has seen it with the news reports that have gone on here over the last several weeks, is that this is supposed to just be about low-level misdemeanors and nonviolent crimes, nonviolent felonies. So we've all seen that that couldn't be any further from the truth. There are people walking out the door of arraignment courts with assault charges, with weapons charges, with gun charges, assault on children, all types of things like this. And I certainly don't think that that's, in anybody's mind, thinks that that's good for our society. Like we said, there are certain reforms that could be done. You don't want to see somebody languishing in jail for 6 months or a year on a $250 bail. That is absurd. But you also don't want to see somebody walking out the door of a jail that was in jail for a vicious assault on a child or selling opiates all over Long Island. That has to be fixed. The legislation has to be fixed, and we have to separate the powers of government. Again, the judges need discretion in this, and we need to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from the detective's perspective, we have Vice President of the DAI, Jeff Gross.
Thank you. I'd like to just reiterate the points that were made already. In addition to that, I felt like this was put in the budget and it wasn't a standalone bill where people could examine the bail reform on its own. Also, when the people don't show up in court, and we haven't seen it yet, and they do warrant out for not appearing, all that workload is going to fall on the detectives. And we have a shortage of detectives already, as you know, and that extra burden of thousands or tens of thousands of extra warrants is really going to be a bigger burden on the county and the department and the resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions you might have.
The overtime is climbing quickly. The resources that we have to put into it, we had to hire additional analysts to go in to do the discovery. We have 30 analysts that work day in and day out analyzing crime to make sure that, and the success that we've had reducing crime, well, now they're all focused on discovery. So they're not doing what we have them planned to do so that we can reduce our crime numbers and keep them low and that quality of life that we all want here in Nassau County. Instead, they're all doing discovery. So a simple arrest. You have to turn over GPS data on the vehicle. You have to turn over the 911 call. You have to turn over the radio transmissions. You have to turn over any video you recover. You have to turn over the drugs, the drug analysis, and then all the arrest paperwork that goes with it. And anything that touches this arrest has to be turned over. Our blotter entries that have to be done. Our police officers' memo books that have to be done. It takes time. And we got a 15-day window to turn it over, and if we don't rake the window, they start dismissing cases, and that's a problem. I think the way it was. There was no, look, justice reform has really nothing to do with discovery. You know, the bail reform has nothing to do with discovery. The discovery side of things is that you're forcing us to go quicker. We're giving up victims' information within 15 days. So there's a gang stabbing down on the street, and some good citizen stands up and says, I saw it and I saw him do it. That person's information now goes to the gang guy within 15 days. And his partners that were not arrested in that crime or may have been charged on a lesser crime will be getting out, and they're going to retaliate against those witnesses. Those victims, like I said, are getting victimized twice, and our witnesses are going to be reluctant to come forward. The North Shore burglars that we had, we locked them up from Chile. We locked up 2 guys on a 90-day visa. They came here to wreak havoc, commit crimes, and then go back within that 90 days. We arrested them within that time period. We put them in jail. The law goes retroactive. We had to pull them out. We told them they will appear next day for their ankle bracelet. Guess who didn't show? And then their court date was last Thursday. Guess who didn't show? They're back in Chile right now, and that's the problem. So they'll send another crew now in to do the same thing. This is something that, if we don't get out in front of it, it's going to cause our crime numbers to climb and climb quickly. The men and women of the Nassau County Police Department are professionals. They're going to do their job, and they're going to give it 110% like they do every day. But you make it harder. You break down that morale, that revolving door, and sooner or later, it's like back in the 80s when I was a young cop, the revolving door in the city of New York, guys used to tell me, why do I bother? Why do I bother? The men and women will always bother here in Nassau County. They'll always do a great job. But at the same time, we got to stand by now because you're jeopardizing their safety also by bringing these bad guys back out.
Yes,
I
Candace.
understand that the DAs are meeting with the legislature, I think it's today.
Yes.
Any news out of
I know that I think they might even be meeting right now. I'm very happy that they're going up. The legislators have been reaching out. They want to get the on-the-ground perspective. The DAs from both counties, Nassau and Suffolk, will give them their perspective. We feel, we who are having to implement the law, we feel it's very important that we plug any implementation gaps, that we make sure that they know, as they're looking to make tweaks, make changes, to revise, that they have our perspective as well.
You talk about the judicial discretion, but do you believe in this atmosphere that a judge would have the political will to release someone that he thought should be released? And in fact, if something bad happens, he or she is going to take the blame for that. So I think the advocates would argue that's why they took judicial discretion out of this.
Well, I know.
How do you counter that?
One of the things that is being considered for the changes is a policy to implement a process of review for bail, so that that sort of thing doesn't happen.
Is that sort of similar to like the New Jersey dangerousness test? Is that
Correct, correct. We need to look at what models are working in other places that have done similar reform and seeing if we can make those kinds of common sense changes here as well.
So are you making specific recommendations to change the law today? Or are you saying that you're...
Not today is not. Today we're talking about the coalition, the Common Sense Coalition, and we're hoping to work very quickly and to be helpful, to get our suggestions up to Albany as quickly as possible.
Is there a report that's going to be released? Or you,
It's going to be a list of recommendations.
and what is sort of the timeline for that?
Hoping to do it within the week, that's the goal. Because we know that they're busy at work up in Albany. I've been speaking to the legislators, and they're very concerned and interested in making some common sense changes. So the people that we have here, we have the sheriff's departments from both counties, police, and input from the unions as well, and prosecutors.
Last question, Madam Executive. What would you say to somebody on a Republican majority legislature who would be maybe criticizing that this is late to the table?
So I would say, first of all, it's not about politics, it's about public safety, and it's about common sense. I would also say that we, on the ground, worked very hard to make sure that we implemented this as safely as possible. Since the law was passed in April, we've been meeting regularly. We've been making sure that we have money in the budget for probation, for the DA, that the police have what they need. And we're also, now that it's law and the legislature is back in session, now is the time to start making those common sense recommendations. All right, thank you very much.